All right, we've talked about fitness, and we've talked about training modalities, and we have talked about conditioning and strength, and we have talked about stretching now. I guess the last kind of thing that we need to really kind of talk about as far as covering some of these basics is breathing. Now, so similar to stretching, I don't fuss much about breathing. There's a couple of basics that you need to know, and I'm really not worried about the rest of it. Now, I've got a buddy who does, is all about the breathing thing and whatever, and he finds it more important than I do. That's fine. If you are one of those kind of people, please follow up with people who are more into this. We're not covering anything from Wim Hof or any of these like Himalayan mountain runners that go super marathons, and we're not dealing with any of that. All right. So we need to cover a couple of basics with what we're talking about here. So number one, what is the purpose of breathing? Well, the purpose of breathing is to oxygenate your blood, because oxygen is important to your vital processes. I mean, that's kind of the number one thing, right? And that's why we talk about VO2 max. And this, as a tangent, I didn't write this down, but this is why breath trainers or altitudes trainers are actually pretty stupid. They don't actually enhance your ability to uptake oxygen. They only make it so that you breathe with a stronger force, but they don't actually increase your VO2 max at all. So there's basically no benefit to them as far as your athletic performance goes, and they make your workouts suck more. I will drop a link to that and some other materials in Substack, as you will know. All right, so the other thing that breathing does is it will actually kind of modulate your heart rate and your state of arousal. And these are actually kind of important things. Now, granted, your heart rate and your state of arousal go together. And to a degree, you can actually modulate those on purpose with breathing strategies. So the basic general rule here is, because you're trying to uptake oxygen, if you are hyperventilating or if you're holding your breath or whatever, you are going to be changing the way that your heart beats, and you're going to be changing your state of arousal to a small degree. So on that side, right, when you are holding your breath, your body is basically going to go into this kind of like almost like panic mode. And it's funny because you'd think that would be when you're trying to conserve oxygen, but it ends up making your heartbeat go faster, making you circulate blood more.
Editing room Solomon here. So I missed this when I was recording the video, and I wanted to make sure I got that in before I sent this video out. And so what we've got here is, when we're talking about breathing, there is an important factor. When we talk about things like apnea training, and when I think about free divers, these people who are able to hold their breaths for insane amounts of time. We talk about these like ocean tribes and stuff, and pearl divers, and then people who just are competitive sport free divers. They can hold their breath for a massive amount of time. Well, one of the things that we have to take into account is that carbon dioxide buildup in the bloodstream is, of course, dangerous, right? We need actual oxygen in our blood, and having a CO2 buildup can be problematic, right? It's a waste product, and we have to get rid of it. And one of the mechanisms that we have is that CO2 buildup will build in panic. So when you feel like you can't breathe, that's where a lot of panic starts setting in. And I have definitely felt that before. You may have as well, getting choked out, even just a hard diaphragm ride, and of course other situations. It's kind of a problem, right? Well, also, there are studies, right, and this is for people with like sleep apnea. That CO2 buildup, like if you stop breathing in your sleep, that CO2 buildup comes in, it sets off the panic alarms, your body goes into an alertness state, which pulls you out of sleep, which interrupts your sleep cycles, and people with sleep apnea have some health issues down the line. Like that's a problem. And keep in mind, right, that like building up tolerance, which is exactly what freedivers do, can actually be somewhat problematic in certain circumstances, right? If you are in an environment where you cannot breathe and you've built up a tolerance so much that the panic doesn't set in, you might end up being basically too tolerant and you basically will just black out due to not having enough oxygen, and then you're in an environment where your breathing mechanism can't restart, like underwater or in a vacuum. Most of us are not astronauts. We're probably not in a vacuum, but you know what I'm saying, right? So you want to make sure that you're training wisely. You probably don't need a 10-minute breath. You probably don't need a 10-minute breath, but having something that can last you, let's just say for the sake of argument, right? Let's say a 3 to 5 minute breath. Hey, the length of a round in mixed martial arts and some other combat sports. Being able to have a long breath is actually somewhat beneficial here. It's just you need to train it wisely. But if you can lower the panic state, that is going to help you fight, and that's where apnea training comes in. Holding your breath, and you can do that holding your breath during certain specific kinds of exercise. I would not do this if I am loaded with anything. This would be something for maybe, I don't know, say running on a fairly soft surface just in case, max push-ups, max air squats, something like that could be fine. You potentially try it with shadow boxing. Again, make sure you're on a safe surface just in case things go sideways, and make sure there's probably somebody around to help you out just in case you do pass out, because you don't want to be hitting your head or any other unintended consequences from that. Please understand that I am not giving you any kind of medical advice, right? This is not advice. These are just informational concepts that we are discussing here. So the point is that I missed this in the initial video, and I wanted to make sure that I got that in here before we continue on. So now let's get back to the video, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
Now the thing is that you don't actually absorb all of the oxygen that you breathe in, so whatever. But then there's this phenomenon because of this that's called square breathing, where it's called square breathing because it's usually done for a 4 count, but there's other schemes. And basically you inhale for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, you hold on empty for 4, and then you repeat that process. And basically what that does is that peaks up your state of arousal to a degree, because you're basically like turning on your fight or flight mode a little bit. Messes with your nervous system and all of that, and that can be useful. Some people can use that to get keyed up to pre-game themselves before rushing into a dangerous situation or whatnot. I'm not recommending this. I'm just saying that that is something that people use. Now, along with the breath holding, right, then we have the Valsalva maneuver. So the Valsalva maneuver is you take in a big breath, you hold the breath, and you hold the glottis closed, and then you strain against it like you're trying to breathe out, but with a completely closed valve. And what that does is that increases your intra-abdominal pressure, that increases your blood pressure. Again, massive state of arousal thing. Well, what that does is it's used big time in powerlifting and strongman, weightlifting and whatnot. And basically what that does is it kind of gives you this almost like pneumatic stabilization, as well as just in general like state of arousal that will enhance your ability to perform in a very brief anaerobic capacity. The research has not borne out any significant dangers to anybody on that. Again, I'm not going to sit here and recommend it to you. I am not a medical professional. but my understanding, my reading of the literature, Valsalva maneuver is no more dangerous than any other method of breathing. I mean, you probably don't want to just do that all the time, but it is not particularly dangerous or injurious. You are very unlikely to, burst a blood vessel or anything like that. And it is very, very useful. And I mean, it's essentially mandatory for maximum effort lifting. Generally speaking, you are not going to use that in martial arts. There's not really too many scenarios where that's going to be too important, but definitely something that you should be considering. It's not particularly dangerous. It is useful, but in a limited capacity. Then kind of the last thing that we need to talk about here is your exhaling. Your exhaling, as opposed to inhaling and holding, your exhaling is actually going to be kind of what drives your heart rate down, reduces your state of arousal. And by having kind of, either like these burst exhales like you hear from like boxers and other martial artists, or longer, slower exhales, used in like yoga and meditation and things like that. What you're doing is you are trying to beat your heart rate back down, get more recovered, catch your breath. It allows you, by just kind of purging and expelling the waste air, and allowing you to kind of breathe in again, it just kind of regulates you back into a more normal state, being able to breathe naturally. The other thing, and from a martial arts standpoint, this is important. A lot of people, especially when they're brand new, especially when they're under stress, will start holding their breath and then they'll gas out. That's really bad, right? You shouldn't have to wait until you gas out to start breathing. So by telling people to exhale, whether it is just a or a tss or a ki or something like that, that exhale, it's basically impossible to involuntarily hold your breath after an exhale. I shouldn't say it's impossible, but it's unlikely that you're going to hold your breath after an exhale. Whereas most people will inhale and hold their breaths subconsciously. So by forcing the exhale, you are forcing yourself to breathe. And that is extremely, extremely useful. We used like patterned breathing, when I was learning Savate, and that was useful to kind of help regulate us and make sure that we were kind of keeping our wind nice and even. And there's nothing particularly special about the pattern. It's just, again, making sure that you're pushing the air out. Sometimes the short, sharp bursts of exhale can be a little bit more useful. But it's not exclusive. It just kind of depends on context and what you're trying to achieve. And then ultimately, man, I remember I was doing Silam Tao for Grandmaster Kwok once, and I was breathing like a boxer and exhaling on the hard moves. And he's like, "Why are you doing that?" And I was like, "Well, it's athletic breathing, like a fighter." And he's like, "No, don't do that. Just breathe naturally." And I get what he's saying, and I'm not going to call out the Grandmaster of my lineage, but I'm just saying the ultimate goal, right, is to get yourself to a point of conditioning where that you can execute your moves at very, very high level performance without having to enter into a massive state of arousal, without having to border on panic, without having to compromise your cardio, all of that kind of stuff. So being able to breathe naturally, being able to find a rhythm where you can just kind of move and, in a sense, be relaxed, right? We are so big on being relaxed. You can't do that if you have just this massive jacked up heart rate and you're borderline panicking. Not all arousal is panic, by the way. Some of it's just being kind of hyped up, right? Turning it on. But you do want to kind of be able to breathe naturally. Oh, and by the way, there was some cool research. I'll see if I can find it. There was some cool research. The old wives' tale about like, pick your arms up so you can expand your lungs better. Turns out not to be true. The actual natural thing of like putting your hands on your thighs and kind of caving over actually makes more room for your lungs and allows you to catch your breath better. So putting your arms up and trying to breathe that way is actually making it worse, not making it better. So go ahead and allow yourself to catch your breath if you need to by putting your hands on your knees and doing that thing. Kind of turns out that sometimes our natural instincts are the correct ones. It's like, it's sometimes like evolution works. So anyway, that's kind of the basics on breathing. Like I said, I don't really push any specific breathing techniques. I just try to remind people that, look, your exhale is going to be the thing that kind of controls your heart rate. Your inhale and your holding are going to be useful in certain situations when you need them, usually for a very much maximal effort kind of thing. For martial arts, you're probably never going to need to hold your breath for something. There is actually a movement for, I guess they call it apnea training or breath holding training, where you actually exhale all your air out, or I guess you could do it inhaling and holding, but either way, you hold your air and then you try to do as much as you can while holding your air to get you used to that, being in that state of almost panic, of like your body doesn't know what to do because there's no air. So you work through that, and it allows you to work through that panic response. Definitely should, that I would think, just because there's the risk of potentially passing out, you probably want to be working with a qualified instructor on that. That's not something that I teach, but it is something that is out there and you should be aware of. So that's the basic thing, right? You need oxygen, so make sure you breathe, focus on the exhale, and that's mostly going to help you regulate. Just if you focus on the exhale, that is going to be the number one thing. All of the rest of this stuff is good to know, but if you focus on the exhale, that's going to do like 80% of the work for you. Just making sure that you continue breathing and that you're getting the air exchange done, to some degree of functionality. All of the rest of the stuff is just stuff on top of that, or very situationally dependent. So, all right, that is our breathing video, and we don't need to go any further than that. I mean, maybe if I learned a cool technique or something, I'll share it with you guys. But that's not something that I am actively seeking out currently. So that's it, and I will talk to you guys later. Good journey.
Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share this with your friends or anybody else who might be interested in this kind of content. If you happen to be in the Metro Phoenix area, come in for a class or just stop in to say hi. We'd love to meet you. Definitely check out our socials and our website that has all of our contact information and all of the other relevant information. And more than anything, check out our Substack. Our Substack will be containing all of the links that we use to cite and reference in our videos, as well as exclusive training content that will be available for premium members. Memberships are cheap, but you can also sign up for free, and we do have articles for free, and we will have more free articles available for you. It is a fantastic platform for what we're doing here, and we hope to see you over there. So I will talk to you guys later, and look out for the next one. Good journey.